Look at that. Just look at how gorgeous it is this morning. It is a gorgeous fall morning. The California trees are sort of changing colors. The air is crisp and clean and filled with the smell of October, and it is I, your guide to all the tabletop role-playing games, news, weather, and general internet spookiness. The OGGM, yet another trip to the Magic Paint store. Because every time I go there, either the machine's not working or they don't have the color. So, yep, going back again. But it gives us a perfect excuse to have a conversation while we're walking. Check out the goats and maybe see some spooky lawn spookiness. And I'm probably going to say the word spooky a few times because it's October. And I love October. And we're doing beginning DM Game Master tips. And why am I doing beginning Game Master tips when everybody else is doing that and has been doing that forever? Is there anything I can offer that you haven't heard from 1,000 other people already? I don't know, but I figure I've been doing this for pretty much since the game came out. You know, I've got my personal resume of gaming experiences. I know I'm inexperienced compared to some, but I still try. And if you get one lesson from any of these starting DM talks we've been having, the one thing I want to keep enforcing for you guys, whether you've been doing this for a year or 100 years, is find your own voice. The best advice I'm going to give you is don't listen to my advice. Don't listen to any of the advice. Especially don't listen to these people who are telling you you're wrong, or you're inexperienced, or you don't have sway, or you're not, you don't know what you're doing. Anybody who says Gary isn't playing that way, anybody who says you're playing the game wrong, those are definitely the ones I would tell you not to listen to. Find your own voice. Now, let's say, beginning Game Master, you're now thinking about the daunting task of world building. And again, start small. Run dungeons, start small, find your own voice. Be prepared, okay? And that's, we're gonna hear that, we're gonna say it a lot. So just get used to the fact that I'm gonna be reaffirming those 3 basic principles of this class. So for sake of argument, we're gonna use Star Wars, okay? Because everybody talks about fantasy. I mean, let's talk about something else besides fantasy. Let's say you have decided, I want to run a game. And you have decided, I want to run a fantasy game, a space game, whatever, okay? Now, do you go to the immense efforts, Herculean efforts of creating your own fantasy game, space game, Star Wars game? Or do you borrow from another? And can you? And we've talked about IP before, so and we'll probably talk about it again. So let's broach on it. And of course, that's why I brought up Star Wars. Can I run a Star Wars role-playing game? Of course you can. Don't let anybody tell you you're not. Is there an official Star Wars role-playing game? Absolutely. There are 3. 4. Definitely 3, maybe 4. 4 official Star Wars role-playing games that have come out over the years. The original Star Wars role-playing game was the West End Games D6 Star Wars game, considered by many to be the best. If you have any interest in the expanded universe, Star Wars expanded universe, pre-Disney, you definitely want to take a look at some of the stuff that West End Games created during the times that they had the Star Wars license, because oh boy, basically they helped create the expanded universe. There's tons of stuff in Star Wars now, even, that owes its birth to the West End Games stuff. But West End Games lost that license, and then TSR/Wizards had it for a while, and they did a Star Wars D20 system that had a very broken initiative system, but some people say was the best, especially in regards to light side and dark side and the Force and stormtroopers and stuff like that. I think they did the card game, but I'm not remember the Saga card system. I think they did a Star Wars one, but I'm not sure. And now there's the current Fantasy Flight Games Star Wars role-playing game. So there's already a Star Wars role-playing game on the market. So can you, having decided that you want to run a space game and you want to run Star Wars, can I run Star Wars? Yes, because people have already done all the work for you, right? There's 3 different games, and each one of those games has multiple source books, plus finding Star Wars source book information is relatively easy. I mean, very few movies has gotten the amount of stuff created for it as Star Wars, right? Wow, no Halloween yards. That's disappointing. So finding the information isn't a problem. Finding a system that emulates Star Wars isn't a problem. Maybe you don't like any of those systems. That's okay. There's plenty of other space systems out there that have tried to emulate space and all the different varieties of space. There's realistic space games. There's space wants to kill you space games. There's more fantastical, high sci-fi space games. There's anime space games. So space games out there exist. And so there's hundreds that have tried to emulate what might happen in space, from Star Trek space all the way up to Event Horizon space to Alien space. It's out there. And you might look at the Star Wars role-playing game and go, the Star Wars game I want to run, none of these 3 systems really work. So the tools are out there. So getting back to, can I run a game in this established world versus should I make my own? Now, I'm lazy. So I'm a big fan of both. Do both. Right? Find your own voice. Find the story you want to tell, whether it be in an established world or a world of your own, and then borrow shamelessly from those of us who have come before you, who have done the work. I want to run a Star Wars game. We're using Star Wars because everybody does Star Wars, right? I know I will not get in trouble for running a Star Wars game because there are Star Wars games on the market. So, and plenty of other space games. So that's not a problem. I found the system that does the mechanics that I want to tell my story set in game. Again, we're using Star Wars, but this goes true for any setting, okay? But how do I run in that setting without interfering with the preset stuff? You tell somebody you're running Middle Earth, you tell somebody you're running Star Wars, you probably tell somebody you're running King Arthur, you tell somebody you're running superheroes. There's instant gates, either, oh yeah, we're going to play during the Hoth thing, or I don't want to play Star Wars because I don't want to risk running into Luke. Well, thankfully, again, you can tell the story you want to tell in these established worlds without worrying about the trademark stuff that's happened. There's hundreds of thousands of stories you could tell in world once you decide you're going to run a established world. And there's hundreds of stories you could take from your mind and play in world without worrying about crossing over into whatever. Again, using Star Wars as an example, in the history of Star Wars, the Luke Skywalker stuff is a blink of the eye, right? There's vast history before then, and there's vast history after then. So the movies and the TV shows are only a small chunk of Star Wars time. There's plenty of other time in the Star Wars universe where you could set your game. There's plenty of other places in the Star Wars universe where you could set your game, so they never have to even have ever heard of Hoth or Dagobah or whatever, right? And if you want to add in your own stuff, you can, because you've got plenty of empty space to work with. If you want to add in stuff from other games or movies or TV shows. Again, it's there. So whether you want to create your own world, I want to run a space game, but I don't want it to be Star Wars. Oh, there's one. You could write your own game, or you could borrow conspicuously from those of us who have gone before you. Find your own voice. Pick the stuff you like from the games that have been written for you. Pick the stuff you like from your own mind. Combine them together. Use the established modules and setting stuff that's been created, and then also make your own stuff, and feel free to intertwine them. Maybe you have a take on the story of the Battle for Hoth that is completely different than the way the Battle of Hoth played out. Maybe you have a take on how the story of the Lord of the Rings happens that is different than the Lord of the Rings we know. And thankfully, these worlds and the imagination and the amount of work those of us who came before you have done gives you that freedom to create your own world, or use a pre-established world, or take stuff from multiple stories and mush them together to create brand new stories, and then set them in this world. You could do Star Wars Casablanca. You could do Lord of the Rings Fast Five. You could do, anything, any story in that universe. And you could tell Star Wars without saying it's Star Wars, because Star Wars is just stolen from another source. What I'm trying to get, again, with this whole find your own voice is you are not pinned down to any specific story once you start swimming in the tabletop role-playing game swimming pool. Okay? You could tell Lord of the Rings without ever having any mention of Frodo. You could tell Star Wars without having any mention of Luke and stuff. You could run a game in these worlds without worrying about the pre-story, right? Because this is your version of Star Wars. This is your version of the Lord of the Rings. This is your version of OGGM world. People have already done all the work for you. Take advantage of it, right? Modules, research, books, articles, it's out there. And you've got 50 years worth of product to go through, and hundreds of people like me out there who have done the work for you. So take what you like, toss aside, find your specific take on the Star Wars universe, find 2 or 3 people who want to play the same game. Now this goes for any game. I'm just using Star Wars because I always use Star Wars. It's either Star Wars or food, right? And then tell your story. Tell your space story. Tell your fantasy story. Tell your Old West story. People, take the stuff that has been done. Take the stuff that you have in your mind. Take the stuff that you like from other things and mash it into your space game. Right? You want to do a Fast Five scenario, but you're running Surf Samurai, the role-playing game? What's to say you can't? Find your voice. Find your own voice. Take from other people. If somebody says, should I make my own world or use a world that's already been written for me? I'm going to definitely say, dude, if somebody's already done the work for you, that's less hassle and more freedom you have to make your own stuff in that world. So take this guide, take the stuff out of this guide, take these maps, or find your own maps online for free. And the stuff you don't like, toss it aside. Find something else. I want to tell the story of Hoth, but I want to add in an avalanche, surfing down the avalanche scene, and explosions going off behind them, right? Okay, why not? I want to tell the story of Hoth, but I want to tell it from the point of view of the planet next to Hoth. Okay, why not? Right? I want to tell the story of Hoth, but I want to tell the story that if all the Empire was over at Hoth, what was going on in all this space that they just abandoned to go over to Hoth? Tell that story. That story's out there, waiting to be told. You've just got to find the way to tell it. You've got to find your voice. Now we're going to go into world building, because you got to go into world building. So this is just a layer of frosting on the world building cake. We can't really talk about game mastering tips without talking about things like world building and NPCs. But with this one, I just want to again give you the permission to look out into the wide world and take it in and find ways to adapt it to the game you want to tell. Whether you want to create your own world or use a pre-established world, you can. You can run Star Wars and not worrying about Disney coming after you. You want to run a story where the droids give the plans to the player characters instead of Luke? Go ahead. It's your Star Wars. Tell it any ways you want. It's your Lord of the Rings. It's your Old West. It's your superheroes. It's your Marvel Universe. It's your Poseidon Adventure. It's your Dallas the role-playing game. Tell your story. Whether you make your own world or use one that's been made for you. Combine everything. Steal, borrow, conspicuously borrow from other products. Oh look, we're at the Ghosts, which means it's time for me to bring this in. If you appreciate this rambling GM tips of mine, let me know. If you never want to hear me do this again, let me know. If you're my cybernetic stalker, Mr. Bird, I look forward to your weekly complaints about me. Until next time, I'll see you.